Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Yountville Town Council meeting for October 4th, 2011. I call this meeting to order. What I would like to also do is remind visitors that are in here tonight, if you could please turn off your cell phones unless you are a part of our public safety employees. Also, I'd just like to recognize for folks both at home and also here in this room, it may sound a little different because we have a new audio system and this is our first meeting, so we are working out the bugs. But it should be much clearer, and you might hear some volume changes as we go out throughout the meeting, but that's we're just tweaking things as we go. And we do also have a new podium that is wheelchair accessible, so we're very happy to have that here. So you see a couple of different things. It's been a few weeks since we've had a meeting, so a little bit of a facelift. With that, I would like to have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Moeller.
Here.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chilton.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here. And if you are able, could you join me, stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move right on to the adoption of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the comment portion of our meeting. That's an opportunity for anyone in the public that would like to speak on an item that is not on tonight's agenda to come forward. Is there anyone interested? Does not look like it. So we will keep moving. On to item 8, consent calendar. We have 2 items on the consent calendar, our monthly financial report, as well as a proclamation declaring the month of October 2011 as Better Bag Month. Is there a motion regarding the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those both pass. And what I would like to do now, in recognition of our Better Bag Month proclamation, I'd like to invite Chip Worrell, who's a Yountville resident and has for many, many years been an advocate for environmental issues, if he would join me at the podium so I could read the proclamation, and I think he has just a couple words also. You put him at that camera right there. This is a proclamation declaring the month of October Better Bag Month. Whereas the town of Yountville supports our natural environment by choosing to evaluate and include use of sustainable practices that help us to use less energy, materials, water, and fuel. And whereas it is estimated that over 68 million single-use plastic bags are used in Napa County per year, and that these bags are only used on average for 12 minutes before they are discarded. And whereas plastic bags litter our landscape and rivers, tangle in our trees, and clog storm drains, and are estimated to kill or injure more than 1 million turtles, seabirds, and other wildlife each year. And whereas plastic bags never biodegrade, but as they photodegrade into smaller and smaller particles, they release toxic substances into our environment, eventually getting into the food chain. And whereas plastic bags improperly tossed into our blue recycling toter bins tangle the machinery at our materials recycling center, ultimately costing ratepayers more money in disposal costs. And whereas plastic bags are made from petroleum and many contain potentially harmful chemical additives, and many are difficult to recycle. And whereas plastic bags cost retailers 3 to 5 cents each, but the actual cost, including cleanup, is at least 23 cents each. And whereas Napa Valley Can Do, a grassroots community service organization, Upper Valley Waste Management Authority, the Town of Yountville, and Upper Valley Disposal participated in Yountville Days Festival and distributed reusable bags to Yountville residents in an effort to call attention to the problems caused by single-use plastic bags, promote reusable shopping bags, and encourage better plastic bag recycling practices, focusing on the month of October 2011. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor of the Town of Yountville, along with the members of the Town Council, do hereby proclaim October 2011 as Better Bag Month in the Town of Yountville. Congratulations, Chip.
Hear, hear.
Thank you for representing our community on this.
Well, thank you much. This may seem like a small item, and it's a fun thing to do here, but it really is a serious issue, and I thank the council and all the other organizations for kind of stepping up, and hopefully it'll help all the rest of us do a better job. Penny and I try to keep our car full of bags, so there's always one there when we shop. Anyway, so thank you for doing this.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here also. With that, we will move on to item 9, presentations. And the first presentation is from the Napa County Health and Human Services. It's a presentation regarding the Friday Night Live program and recognition of the Yountville Town Council for their support of the Social Host Ordinance. Is there any lead-in staff report, or shall we just welcome our guests? Michelle,
Go ahead and welcome.
do we have
Yes, please.
anything, Steve? In that case, please come on up and introduce yourselves, if you would, please.
All right. Hello, my name is Mackenzie Levy, and I'm from the Friday Night Live Youth Council in the Napa High School chapter. I became involved in Friday Night Live a little over 2 years ago because I wanted to become a role model for other youth in the community to kind of have the courage to stand up against the issue of underage drinking.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm also part of the Youth Council and the Napa High chapter. I became part of FNL because it has presented another way for youth to engage in our community, and it allows youth to experience leadership opportunities.
Napa County Friday Night Live is a youth development program coordinated through Napa County Health and Human Services Alcohol and Drug Services Prevention Program. The program has 4 chapters, one at Justin Siena High School, one at Napa High and Voices, Calistoga High, and Valley Oak High.
The youth members of Friday Night Live partner with adults to address the issue of underage drinking in the community. We do this by taking actions to reduce youth access to alcohol, reduce the number of alcohol advertisements that young people are exposed to, change the norms that make underage drinking acceptable, and support policies that can help reduce underage drinking rates. We have educated the community about this issue and the social host ordinances through presentations, town hall meetings, and media advocacy. We are also working to help reduce youth access at local stores and promote responsible advertising.
We also received the California Alcohol and Drug Program Administrators Association of California 2011 Prevention Award. And we would now like to show you a brief video about the Napa County FNL program.
The thing about Friday Night Live is it changes people's lives in a lot of different ways.
Underage drinking is a real problem in Napa County and is the #1 contributing factor to death among people under 21. Local surveys have shown that 41% of Napa County's 11th graders had consumed alcohol at least once in the preceding 30 days. 29% admit to driving after drinking, and 76% say it's easy or fairly easy to get alcohol.
Our Friday Night Live chapter helps open the community's eyes about the problems of underage drinking and see that it is a real issue. It shows that it is possible to prevent all of the bad things that happen when teens drink.
Friday Night Live doesn't just discourage youth from underage drinking. It really empowers them, and it gives them real-world job skills.
It helps us learn how to work with our peers and adults, and it helps teach us how to speak in public. At our big event, the town hall meeting, I had to speak in front of 120 people, and before I would have never done that.
So a lot of people ask, what is Friday Night Live? And Friday Night Live is really a youth development program that engages youth in implementing research-based projects, campaigns, and policy development to address problems with alcohol in the community, such as underage drinking, which is their current focus. So the youth that are involved with Friday Night Live have opportunities to connect with their community, build relationships, and develop leadership skills.
During the 2009 to 10 school year, Friday Night Live grew from 1 chapter to 4 chapters in Napa County, all of which focused on preventing underage drinking in the community. Activities included the planning and hosting of 2 successful town hall meetings about underage drinking, collecting data to learn where youth access alcohol and how alcohol is promoted to youth. 2 chapters even worked on building community support for local ordinances that prevent underage drinking at house parties, the #1 source of alcohol among teens in Napa County. Our chapter at Justin Siena also worked with Napa Police to bring the TRACE protocol to Napa. In the case of alcohol-related injuries or deaths where underage drinking is involved, this protocol helps Napa Police identify where minors got their alcohol and hold that source accountable.
We work as teams, and we work on really specific projects that take real action to reduce underage drinking and the problems it causes. I feel great that we might be helping save people's lives.
Hosting a Friday Night Live chapter on the campus has been an incredible experience. Not only has it helped us promote our school, but it also helped us increase our connections to the community. But what's most important is to see the growth and the confidence and the self-respect that these youth are gaining through their participation in Friday Night Live. And hosting it at our campus is just not an option. It's an incredible, incredible opportunity.
We know that our voices matter, and that even me, just one person, can actually make a difference and save lives by speaking out.
What started out as a program to keep kids busy on Friday nights so they wouldn't turn to alcohol has evolved into so much more. Now, youth, in partnership with adults, develop specific targeted plans to tackle the problem of underage drinking and drug abuse head-on.
One of the most important things about Friday Night Live is that it allows our voice, the youth's voice, to be heard. We work with adults, we plan events, and we help youth in our community get involved. It's an opportunity for people to see us in a leadership capacity.
This program has really earned my respect. It shows that youth really are involved in the community and want to make it better. They take on real issues and they work with and talk to local officials, and that's true leadership. It's just a great program.
Friday Night Live builds partnerships between youth and adults to improve their communities. This approach creates life-changing opportunities for youth to step up, take the lead on something important to them, and find ways to make a difference.
So they're beginning to learn different ways of thinking about what their role in the community is. But most importantly, they're building hope. They're beginning to believe that they can make a difference instead of automatically assuming that they can't. And these are life and career skills that Friday Night Live participants will carry with them forever.
I loved being a part of Friday Night Live the last 4 years. I'm really proud of the work that we've done, and I can't wait to see it get even better in the future.
So now the Napa County Friday Night Live and Napa County Health and Human Services Alcohol and Drug Services Prevention Program would like to present the Healthy Places to Live, Learn, Work, and Play Leadership Award to the Yountville City Council in recognition of their exceptional leadership in preventing underage drinking through the adoption of an updated social host ordinance.
I'll come on down.
So underage drinking is an issue that has serious impacts on the young people in our community, affecting their brain development, academic success, health, and also leading to tragic consequences for young people, families, and the community. It is so important that the community comes together to do what we know works to help prevent underage drinking, and policy is an important part of preventing this problem. Thank you for your support in this effort, and we hope that you continue to support underage drinking efforts because there is still a lot of work to be done. For further information, you can contact Katie Keating, which I think was on the paper that you guys have received. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation and the video. Excellent job. And I'll just pass this around to the town council, but thank you very much. It's a beautiful plaque, and we're also proud of partnering with you on helping out the community. So thanks very much for being here tonight. I'll share that. We like to receive awards sometimes, too, not just give them out. That's good.
That's awesome.
Next up, we are going to move on to the, let me just pass this way. Actually, when you're finished, maybe you can just pass it down to Steve. We're going to move on now to the item 9B, Parks and Recreation Summer Activity Report. Looks like we have the whole crew here.
We do. It's my pleasure to be here tonight with our staff to give you a presentation on the terrific work that we did this summer. The hardworking staff put together this report with me, and we have a short PowerPoint we'll run through as well. You'll note that in the staff report you received that we're giving you a recap of programs from May through September. So although those overlap the fiscal year in this report, you also probably saw some relating back to our 2012 fiscal year budget and those cost recovery goals as well. So I know I try to spell that out fairly plainly for you. Hopefully it made sense because the programs do span fiscal years, so we try to make that clear. I would like to ask Lisa to come up first to present on our aquatics programs.
Good evening. Here we go. Okay, the Yountville Community Pool opened this summer on Saturday, June the 11th. We were open for 6 days and closed on Mondays. We offered the same pool schedule that consisted of senior swim, community swim, resident swim, and family night swim. The pool is open a total of 59 days, or 136 hours per week this season. The pool closed on Friday, August the 19th, due to a main water line pipe break. This shortened our season by 7 days. I'm happy to say, though, that this issue has finally been resolved and recently fixed. The pool employed 22 staff this summer, of which 7 were returning from last summer. They consisted of a pool manager, a WSI, 2 senior guards, 11 lifeguards, and 7 pool attendants. The average weekly attendance was 699 users, or 117 per day. The largest capacity days were July 3rd with 213 users and July 4th with 256 users. Community swim totals for 2011 were 7,900 participants versus 7,104 participants for 2010. If it were not for the waterline pipe break, we probably would have exceeded our 2010 participation totals. Senior swim totals for 2011 were 469 participants compared to 2010 with 515. We typically continue senior swim time during the week after we close for the weekdays in mid-August, and then school begins. Again, with the early closure of the pool, these numbers probably would have been very close to our 2010 participation totals. Next. Swim lessons. We had 4 sessions of swim lessons this season. Each session consisted of 8 lessons that were 30 minutes in total time. We began lessons the first week the pool was open and ended our last lesson on August the 5th. We found out last summer that many families tend to go on vacation the week before school starts and missed out on lessons during that time. This summer we purposely avoided lessons prior to school beginning. Lesson fees stayed the same, which were $40 for residents and $46 for non-residents. We also added a caregiver child beginning swim class. This class was well received, and we had 45 caregiver child duals participate in this program. We also changed swim lesson ability categories, which allowed more advanced students to participate in earlier lesson times. Total enrollment for 2011 swim lessons was 339 participants, with 104 being residents and 196 being non-residents, as compared to 2010 with an enrollment of 286, 127 being residents and 159 being non-residents. So resident registration was up by 16 students, and non-residents were up by 37 students this summer. Next. Our pool revenue summary entrance fees were down slightly, but were associated with the 7 days of early closure. Staff is confident that those fees would have been either the same or slightly higher. Family couple pass purchases increased by $4,084, or roughly 47%. Camp and parties had a total of 3,520 this summer versus 3,574 in 2010. Our snack bar revenues showed a slight increase from $7,293 this summer as compared to $7,299 in 2010. Our prices were also slightly increased at our snack bar this year. Our swim lessons had an increase of $1,658 this summer as compared to last summer. And lastly, our junior lifeguard program had an increase of $580. We had 5 residents and 10 non-residents participate in this program this summer. So when we add all the total revenues up for a total of $52,240, or an increase of $6,202 in 2011. Some suggestions that staff recommends for next season include adding more private swim lessons and trying to get the word out more to entice people to take some private swim lessons. Change the free resident swim time possibly to Saturdays following community swim to make more accessible to residents. Once again, offer individual swim passes. We used to offer those a couple years back and had a very low amount of people take use of those swim passes, and so this year a lot of people said, I'm an individual and I don't need a couple and I don't have a family, so we're going to bring those back again next year. Look at increasing swim lesson fees slightly to match up with some of the other local agencies, and our participation has been really good with that, and I think it could be bumped up a little bit. Look at selling some more healthy options at our snack bar. We try to do as healthy as possible, and we work some food in this year and hopefully get some more healthy options in next year. And possibly at the end of the regular pool season in mid-August, consider possibly when we go to weekend shifts, maybe not having senior veterans swim. Current statistics show that the staffing does not, the amount of people participating in that program during the weekdays after we shut down when school starts doesn't really outweigh the staffing costs. So that is something to consider. Does the council have any questions in regards to the aquatic report?
Looks like the Vice Mayor is reaching for the microphone. Vice Mayor.
Well, one question I have, and this just goes back to feedback I've heard, has to do with the time of day that the pool is open, especially on weekends, where it seems like the hottest part of the day is from 3 to 5 o'clock, but the pool closes at 4. So I don't know if you guys have talked about or have considered. I saw in here the idea of resident swim on Saturdays. I'm moving that from Sunday to Saturday, which I think is a good idea. But even the idea of doing open swim from 1 to 5 to catch more of that and not be overlapping with lunch as much. I'm curious if you guys have had discussions on that idea, because I've heard that from a lot of people.
Resident swim is typically on Wednesday evenings. It's family swim that happens on Sunday evenings. And so one of our thoughts was to, yes, extend those hours for resident swim when we closed at 4 and extend it so then the residents have more time to swim. We could do some changes and pull it back to a 1 o'clock, just sometimes confusion. Keeping the same time frame from 12 to 4 sticks in people's minds, for 6 days a week, but there's a possibility of that.
And altering it during the weekday would run into our lesson, our current lesson structure, which is where we bring in a lot of our revenue is through lessons. But on the weekends, that's definitely something we can look at.
So if I hear it properly, because I was thinking incorrectly, you're right, is that you would have the resident swim on Saturday evening, shall we say, and then the family pass swim on Sunday evening.
Correct.
Okay, I think that would solve all of those issues. And
yeah, the resident would pick up right at 4 o'clock and go to about, I think it's like 7:30, and then family swim goes right into after the lessons, after resident or community swim on Sundays. So
okay. Terrific,
hit
thank you.
those late hours.
Any other questions? Councilor Hall?
I just have one question maybe it's more question than anything else, and that is with regards to a master's program for swimming. I don't know if that's been explored or if we've considered putting that in the next survey that goes. I know there's periodic surveys to the residents about what they might be interested in with regards to services. the pool gets open. I know there's a senior or an early morning swim time. Some people that go to work or want to go work out, that may be an option, but certainly something to consider in the next survey to get that kind of feedback. I for one, would probably
Yeah, definitely.
be interested.
We used to have some evening times after swim lessons would end. We tried to have like lap swimming or master swim, but we didn't have a real good turnout for that, so
That's the only
we ended those. But there's a thought to try it, bring it back. We're always willing to try something, and then if it doesn't, pan out, then we can cancel something like that pretty simply.
Well, if there was I know historically we've done a survey of the community, and I don't know what the feedback is like for that, but certainly, if there was that sort of an option, people may be interested, or if people knew there was an option available, maybe they would be more interested, but that's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
we have found that some people who did want lap swimming, they wanted it very, very early in the morning, like a 6 a.m. before they had to go to work or something. And unfortunately, that puts a big gap in the day for staffing and opening the pool.
Sure,
and such.
sure. It's got to be reasonable within the schedule that's allotted, but yeah. Good, thank you. Great report.
Any other questions?
Other questions? The one question I had actually had to do with the fees. You mentioned, if I heard it correctly, that you were looking at a little bit more cost recovery in some areas, and you feel like there's a willingness. We're not going to impact what are, I think, fairly positive numbers here with the participants. You feel like there's some tolerance there?
I do feel there's tolerance. We haven't increased swim lessons for 2 years, and we still are the lowest in the valley right now. So I still think there is wiggle room for, a slight, modest increase.
Okay. Yeah, one more, Vice Mayor.
I'm going to contradict myself from past years and go on the fee concept. To me, this year it was particularly obvious the number of people from Napa who were coming up during community swim time. And I had a couple of people, I had some people I knew from Napa, so I'll just leave it at that, who were up here with their kids. And they made the comment of, well, this is so great because there's nothing like this in Napa. And it was ironic coming from the source, who I won't say who it was. And I really do wonder if we have something that is not being offered in Napa, or is not available, or people are going to, their private swim clubs in neighborhoods in Napa, but they're not doing that because it's just cheaper to come to us. I do think that it makes sense to maybe revisit the non-resident fees on those. I don't know, it's just a thought, and I know I've never said that in the last 5 years, so.
And just to point out, we do have
You can always change your mind.
a consistent non-resident policy across the board. So we would really probably come back to council to look at that across the board. We mark, it's a 15% increase for all of our program areas, so, yeah.
Or it could be looked at as a discount for our residents, as
It is a
opposed to an
discount
increase
for your
the
residents,
non-residents.
yes. But in most of our program areas, that's what makes up about half of our enrollment. And so I wouldn't want to stray too far from having them be encouraged to come here to Yountville, because it's what sustains
I've made
a
this
lot of our
argument for
areas.
years, so
I know.
I get it. I think this may be one
But
area
we can
where
definitely
that's
take a look at that.
Great.
possible.
Before Lisa slides away, she made a subtle point that I do want to stress, that everybody realizes. This is one of our highest years for cost recovery, and I think it's an excellent recognition of Sam, Lisa, and the pool manager, Lindsay, and the team, and a focus on trying to do what's right. I still want to point out that this is still one of the single largest general fund subsidies that the town makes, and even with a 40% cost recovery, we are contributing, 40% means there's still 60% that we absorb, so I think that's a fair comparison. But I do think a lot of effort and kudos need to go out to the Parks and Rec staff, because this is obviously, we projected a 31% cost recovery, so to improve this is a very significant thing.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that point. Thank you very much, Lisa.
I believe Carol's up next.
Welcome, Carol.
Welcome. I'm Carol Rasmussen, the program director for, I'm the program director for the summer camp, and I am a recreation coordinator for the town. And we're going to go to the next slide. There we are, Camp Wyville. And our theme this year, next, is Once Upon a Time. And this year I wanted to incorporate more theatrical poetry writing. We did dance. We were able to explore a lot of things in the world of the make-believe. This year we had 302 registrations for our summer camp with an average of 38 campers each week. And our budget. We exceeded our expectations, and we had 102 cost recovery in this year of 2011. Very exciting. This year, our campers went on 7 field trips, which included the Graham Water Park in Antioch. We actually went twice. We went to the Museum in San Francisco. We visited Scientopia and Rockzilla. We went to the Jelly Belly factory. We went to Discovery Kingdom and the San Francisco Zoo. And I'd never attempted that before. We went to the San Francisco Zoo, and it was very exciting. We collaborated this year again with the Napa Valley Museum. We were working with the with the Napa Valley Museum. We also collaborated with the with the library for our reading program. Next.
Thank you.
And there we go. We included healthy snacks. We tried to, we worked at the Brain Garden this year up at the Veterans Home. We collaborated with them. We planted our vegetables at the beginning of the summer. We were able to harvest them at the end of the summer. Many children discovered radishes for the first time and actually liked them. And there we are with the Brain Garden. That was one of our biggest events. We went every week. We planted green beans and radishes, and we were able to plant all kinds of products and vegetables, and the kids actually learned a lot about what makes things grow. We also got to do a lot of fun things by decorating the garden with a lot of garden art too. So, and we worked with the couple of the veterans from the Pathway Home, and we were able to collaborate with them, and it was kind of neat to see the generations working together. There we are. We did the reading program with the library. We met with them every Wednesday. They provided us with puppet shows and different activities. We did the visits with the Napa Valley Museum. Pat provided an amazing program for us every Tuesday. We got to visit the Yountville Pool twice a week. That is definitely the highlight of summer camp, is going to the Yountville Pool. And then our Brain Garden visits, along with our other excursions to the beautiful parks here in Yountville. There we go. Is there any questions?
Any questions of Carol? Before question, I just would say that it might help your presentation after you go to the Jelly Belly factory to bring a sample, just so we can see what you were experiencing.
For sure.
Just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Well, my only comment is, it's incredible, first of all, the enormous amount of things that you do get accomplished, but in addition to that, having cost recovery that exceeds what your cost is also, I think, near and dear to everybody in this room's heart. But it probably is underwritten by the fact that you're a huge draw for the children in the community. So
thank you.
That's great news. I mean, we'll take 102% cost recovery everywhere, including the pool next. So
yeah. Well, I got real creative.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that.
That's great.
Any other questions?
I would just like to say that I'm really happy to see all the positive trending across the programs, and congratulations to the whole department. And I know that the kids really enjoy it, so thank you.
Thank you.
And then also, I just want to add thank you for also including the multi-generational aspect of it, and trying to show that food doesn't just automatically come from a plastic bag at the supermarket.
Exactly.
Which is
It
great.
was fun. We did a lot of cooking projects, and I think it really does make a difference for the kids to plant their own vegetables and see how they grow, and to actually go and pick them and to eat them in the garden was so fun. It was a neat experience for all of us.
Because that is what we do and enjoy around here as adults, too.
That's true.
So.
We do.
Thanks very much, Carol.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. I just wanted to say, I think it may have been those orange shirts that made it all work. So you may want to do that again next year.
Your daughter.
She picked the orange.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm Jennifer Carvalho. I'm the recreation supervisor for the town. I have the pleasure of overseeing the YTX program, which is the Yountville Teen Extreme. Yountville Teen Extreme was a 7-week program this summer. We narrowed the program down from 6th grade through 11th grade to 6th through 9th grade. We found with narrowing the program down, we did actually decrease some of our participants. The overall course of the summer, we had 73 registered for the YTX program this summer, with an average of 11 teens attending per week. Some of the exciting things that the YTX campers participated in over the summer were educational scavenger hunts where we would learn facts about Yountville. We would go find different historical things in town and take pictures by them so they would learn all about their community and different aspects of what was happening within our town as well. One of them was the Brain Garden. We actually had to hike all the way up there and learn about the Brain Garden and the Veterans Home. Some of the other things we did was we went on exciting field trips. We went to Sky High Trampoline. We also, they talk about that feedback, right? Went to Discovery Museum. We continued to collaborate with the City of St. Helena to provide cost-efficient excursions to make sure that both programs were utilizing their resources by providing transportation together. So we found that those helped keep the cost down for both the programs. We made over 100 centerpieces for the Veterans Home and learned about community service. So this November, when you are participating in the Veterans Home Luncheon, you're going to see centerpieces on each of the tables up there that the teens this summer made with the Veterans Home. They made over 100 centerpieces with all the flags, and so this fall when you're there at the luncheon, you'll recognize all that hard work all the teens did up there with Susan Himes at the volunteer program at the Veterans Home. They also were able to once a week go over to the gym. We partnered with the gym, and Stephen was nice enough to offer his services in teaching the kids about different cardio activities. So the kids were able to learn, again, that trend of learning the healthy eating, healthy exercise within the department. Keeping that flow through the department was really great. And then we also, getting down to the budget part of it though, I didn't see as much cost recovery as I would like to have seen, but again, with the decrease in the sizes and hopefully getting out there and marketing a little bit more towards the north end as well as the schools, and actually taking a group of, now we have a leadership group within our program to the schools, and hopefully gaining more participants, we can continue to keep the monies and the trends going the same way. And although we did not recover as much cost as we would like to, we also did not spend as much. So that helped us out there a little bit. I think our goal was 56%, and we actually made 64%. So we met our goal. So that's the good news. And what else? With the new account structure, we're hoping to see better where our spending goes, because as in prior years, the 5405 account was a mixed jumble of wonderful scattered different programs, and now we're, thanks to our accounting department, we're able to lineise better and see exactly where our spending and our revenues are at, so that will help us for future years on programming. So that's our YTX report. Do you have
any questions from the council?
Well, just a comment also that, I think exceeding your goals is always a good thing. That's part of that positive trending, so just keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And welcome, Stacy.
Hi, thank you. I'm Stacy Nunley. I'm the administrative assistant for the Parks and Rec department, and I'm going to talk about the Parks and Bocce Court rentals.
Wow.
So you know that this is really cool. So, this is our first full summer that we increased our implemented park rentals. We went up from $30 to $50 for our residents, depending on which park site you rented. And also, we increased the non-resident fees. Even though we saw a decrease in rentals, we actually saw a significant increase in our revenue this year. So we had a lot of, did a couple weddings, we did a couple of bridal showers that were pretty big. So we did some really nice things in our parks this year. So do you have any questions?
Any questions? The one comment I will make, and then I'll allow Councilmember Dornbecker, but I know at least the Bocce Club is very concerned about the lights, and I suspect that our rental capacity may be a little bit limited when we don't have a little bit of an extended day to offer people. I'm not sure of that, but it's just something to throw out there and know that we're evaluating.
Just a pleasant and polite reminder, the council has already approved the lighting project that will be commenced in construction in mid-October at the conclusion of this current bocce season, so I just want to
See, it's that kind of fast action that I like to see. Good job, Stacy.
Good job, Stacy. Thank you very
So it's just a matter of turning them on. It's
much.
almost like,
And then, we'll go from sun up to, well, whenever. Midnight, yeah.
Rein that in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in closing, I just want to really acknowledge my staff. I think that I've been here almost a year and a half now, and there's been a lot of significant changes in the department, and I think that you should feel really confident, as well as the citizens, that you have a group of very hardworking and dedicated people in the Parks and Recreation Department, and that's pretty clear to me. And I also hope that you as the council are seeing some of the benefits of the changes that have been made as far as our cost recovery, and really looking at marketing and filling our programs and the community center with positive activities. So thank you.
Thank you. And I did want to give Councilmember Dornbecker a chance. You may have wanted to comment just a moment ago.
That's all right. I actually did have a question for Stacy about the bocce courts, and I was wondering how are those monitored? Because it sure seems like there are people playing bocce all the time there.
Well, the Bocce Club has it, 3 days a week from 3 until 6 or 7 at night. And then they can rent them from me. Tuesday is open bocce play. There's no reservations. It's first come, first serve, and no charge.
I see.
And then Friday, Saturday, Sundays, basically when we rent it. So if they come during the day and no one's there, it's open to anyone.
I see.
Yeah. So
it's only if they want to reserve it for their.
Yeah, and I suggest to people Friday, Saturday, Sundays. It's a huge reservation day. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor?
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Mueller.
I'd just like to make some summary comments after everyone's given such great presentations. I know we asked a lot of your department this year, especially during the last budget. Probably the most challenging to really look into sustainability and cost recovery. And I think that's certainly what we've heard here tonight, that you've, for the most part, always met and greatly exceeded your goals. And this is really important because it really also helps us support you in the programming that's important to our community. So just, really, probably from all of us, as you've all heard, I think that's really very important. And one thing that I noticed, and this is really a question, that kind of jumped out to me was the 47% increase in the swim pass that you had from last year to this year. And I was just wondering, since that seemed to be so successful, if you've ever considered having some kind of a passport system to a lot of Parks and Recs activities. I don't know how you'd bundle them. I'd let that certainly up to you, since that worked out so well for the pool. Maybe coupling open gym with something on, you guys could think about that, but a recreation card that you sell for a certain price, or a passport for a lot of things. I mean, if it worked for swimming, it might have some value across, so.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All
That's
right,
a great
thanks.
suggestion, Margie. Thanks for your kind words also.
And the one just final comment I'll make to all of you is I also appreciate, I'm sure the whole council does, the flexibility and kind of the nimbleness of the whole program or each program and the whole department, that as you see things are working and not working, you change them and you adapt. And we're not just forcing certain programs or certain plans just because we think they're the right thing. We're really trying to provide what the community is asking for. So I want to just say thanks and kudos in that regard too. So keep up the good work, and Carol certainly has given you all quite the bar to try to achieve with that cost recovery number. Thanks again very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item 9C.
Mayor?
Yes. Public comment. Oh, public comment about the community service? If we, please, come forward. Sorry, I didn't see that you were back there ready to have a comment, but please.
I didn't raise my hand until late. My name is Edwin Warren. I'm a member of the Park and Rec Commission, and I'm also a member of the Home. So I want to first say how proud I am to be part of the Rec and Park Commission, and what I think it's a really great program. Although I do have to note that the report is made to the council without having come before the commission. And so it seems to me that if we're going to have a commission, we ought to find a way that the report and the recommendations and all that come from not only the staff, who I think did an excellent job, I don't mean to short that at all, but that also you add to what it is, this group that you ask, called a Park and Rec Commission, to participate in some manner. And I think it's a matter of timing, and, you know, it's not too difficult to solve. I have a couple of comments about some of the pieces. One, the number 4 bocce ball court. It is radically different from the other 3 courts. Now, I don't know if that's just intended to sort of give a challenge to the members to sort of learn to throw hard or soft, or if it is something that's the responsibility of the club and not the city. But it would be great if those things had some consistency to it. I think less frustration on the part of the members. And that'll probably be solved by next year. For the camp, I just wanted to offer an idea, and that is that you all know that the home has 287 different kinds of trees. So maybe the camp could have a treasure hunt to find different kinds of trees and to identify them. And they could run around and have a lot of exercise and find these things. I think it might be something that could be turned into a real project. On the pool, I had asked at the start of the year, unsuccessfully, and I will ask again tonight, that some way something be found so that warm weather is available for senior swim as well as cold weather time. Some of the members at the home like having early morning swim, and they do laps. Some people like myself grew up in the Gulf of Mexico, near there, and we're used to swimming in warmer times. And so, and I remember when I was a kid and learning the first swim in Sherman, Texas, that I went early in the morning to learn how to swim. I mean, kids have all that energy, and so maybe there could be a way in which some days there's early morning swim and sometimes senior swim, and so those two things alternate on the days that they're available. That seems to me to be a possibility. And lastly, I think it'd be good, I want to mention to you an issue that relates around the swimming, which has to do with the parking. We have cars that park, they just totally ignore the signs. And there's other places where the signs might be put up which would help deal with having the parking in the proper places rather than in the resident places. And I think more signs would be helpful. But the other thing is that there's a real danger to the people who participate in swimming who park away from the pool. Because I remember one day I was aghast to see a mother with a child on each side walking down the street from the ballpark, which there's where the excess is supposed to park, with cars going by. Those sidewalks haven't been finished. So maybe y'all could encourage the home to get busy and finish that sidewalk project. It is really I think a danger to residents that go up there. So that's what I wanted to say. And if I might just say one other thing that doesn't deal with the INDA. As a member of the chairman of the legislative committee, I just want to thank any support and help I got, because I know I got some from some of you at some points. We got SB 10 passed and signed by the governor, and we are pleased.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Warren, I'll just mention specifically about Court 4, there is already movement, just kind of like my whole comment about the lights, and it magically is already underway. The resurfacing of the courts is also already well underway, and the attempt is to make all 4 relatively equal.
Well, I was a member this year for the first time. My wife and I hope to come back next year. It's great fun.
Great. Thank you.
And it is one of many ways Rain Garden is another, where there is a connection between the home and the rest of the east and the west side of the city. That's what I call it.
Thank you, and appreciate your feedback, and everybody heard it, so we're going to get some of those comments, and I think certainly including the commission makes sense in giving the presentation, so thanks very much for those comments. Now we are going to move on to item 9C. This has been a long time in the making for our town manager, but the International City County Management Association has presented our town manager, Steve Rogers, in honor of his 25 years of service to local government, a plaque which I will present. And Steve, if you would join me at the podium that I now realize goes up and down.
Which is on the right.
That would be a good time to raise that up.
Yeah. There you go.
We're just going to kind of marvel in this for a little bit.
Too.
Oh, yeah.
Put your car in
Keep turning.
It's on. Steve, on behalf of the ICMA, in honor of 25 years of service to local government, Stephen R. Rogers is recognized for significant contributions and achievements in the advancement of local government administration. Presented at the 97th ICMA Annual Conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, September 19th, 2011, by David M. Childs, ICMA President, and Robert O'Neill, Jr., ICMA Executive Director. 25 years. Congratulations.
It seems a little odd speaking from this point, but I have a tremendous respect for local government. I have a tremendous respect for the council, the efforts that they make. I got into this career early and made a decision going to college that this is what I wanted to do, but I had exposure from parents that taught me that you had to give. My parents, one was, my dad was a park and rec commissioner, and my mother was a downtown development authority. And they had a polite saying, which was, if you weren't going to get involved, then you really shouldn't complain. My dad shortened it a little, but I'll leave it at that. In 25 years, I have to say that this is one of the most unique communities I've had the privilege of working in. I am incredibly pleased and proud of the team of employees that we have here. I know sometimes they think I move a little too fast, a little too quick. Sometimes they'd wish I would just take a break. And they're slowly learning that I am always thinking, and I'm always looking at how we can improve things. And that doesn't mean that we're not doing a good job, but it just means that that's part of the approach that we want to do is what can we be doing, how can we be doing something a little better, and how can we do it different. But again, I really want to express my appreciation. We have an outstanding management team. I'd like to acknowledge those as well as all the employees, because we do have a group of people serving Yountville that care about Yountville, and that's what's important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and well-deserved, Steve. So you started when you were 6.
About that.
Moving on to item 10, public hearings. We have none this evening. So we will move on to item 11, administrative and regular items. First being civil fines and penalties update, introduction to the proposed municipal code modifications to civil fines and penalties, infractions, misdemeanors, and administrative citations. And I believe we do have a staff report.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council. This effort has been months in the making, if not a year and plus in the making, in an effort to review and analyze the Yountville Municipal Code and attempt to bring parts of it back to the Town Council in an effort to modernize the existing language of the town code. A big step was taken when there were revisions made to Title 8, Chapter 805, which is the enforcement, nuisance abatement, and cost recovery provisions, basically the code enforcement areas of the code. However, as we continue to look at the language of the Yountville Municipal Code, and working with the town manager and the town clerk, our office has identified 5 key areas for the town council's consideration. These are strategies that we are proposing to the town council in order to bring, again, stronger language to the code, and also provide some greater teeth to those that attempt or do in fact violate the town code. Additionally, the purpose of these recommendations is to review and analyze the existing fines and penalties that are imposed for some of the violations that are a part not just of the code enforcement provisions, but throughout the entire town code. So what I'd like to do briefly is cover those 5 key elements and set forth staff's recommendations. Then we can come back and revisit and, if possible, receive some direction from the town council. The first key element to the strategy is that currently the town municipal code provides that all violations are infractions unless declared misdemeanors. What staff is recommending is that we turn the coin over, so that there is as I mentioned earlier, more teeth to the penalties imposed. A misdemeanor under California law can be punished by a fine of up to $1,000 and 6 months in jail, or both. Now, that doesn't mean that every violation of the Yountville Municipal Code must be a misdemeanor. It does, however, allow, if we do that, turn that coin over, allow for the violators to be under the possibility of a much more stringent penalty than merely a slap on the hand. So the first recommendation is that the staff is recommending that we bring back ordinances that would declare the Yountville Municipal Code violations to be deemed as misdemeanors unless specifically made an infraction by the ordinance. The second area and second strategy that staff has examined and analyzed is that to clarify that a continuous violation of the same offense may give rise to additional penalties. Again, certain sections of the existing code do not provide clear definition that ongoing offenses may give rise to more significant penalties and fines. An example that a first offense may only result in an infraction, a second offense may lead to an infraction with more significant fine, but a third offense may lead to misdemeanor penalties. It is a recommendation of staff that the ordinances be provided to the town council for revisions that the Yountville Municipal Code will clarify that multiple violations within certain time frames will result in more significant penalties. The third key strategy is that daily or ongoing offenses of the same offense are sometimes not clear that they are whether they are a singular violation or that they are reoccurring violations. In this area, staff is recommending that revisions be made to the code that clarifies that ongoing violations are not singular violations, but separate and distinct, and which may give rise to increased penalties. The fourth strategy presented is that currently some of the violations that are in the municipal code are merely civil penalties, and again, if we take the premise that we look at those as misdemeanors with more significant consequences for violation, then the likelihood of violators to commit those penalties or commit those violations will hopefully be reduced. So staff is recommending that we review the areas of the administrative violations and they be readjusted either to infractions or misdemeanors as the town council feels is appropriate. The fifth and final approach is the review of penalties for traffic and parking violations. It's noted that the town contracts with the Sheriff's Department and that our current fines are inconsistent or lower than the County of Napa's established fine schedule, and that our existing traffic and parking violations have not been modified for a period of 7 years. Again, in this area, staff is recommending that the town council review the schedule of fines and to impose increased fines for violations of traffic and parking offenses to be consistent with the County of Napa schedule. So we've set forth these 5 key strategies. Again, for the town council, we are seeking direction Of course, there are alternatives that the town council may consider, which are set forth in the staff report. But at this time, Mr. Mayor and members of the town council, we are seeking for your comments and direction in these 5 areas.
Thank you very much for that staff report. Are there any questions about the staff report before we get further into this? Any questions from council? Councilmember Hall?
Yes. Hi, thank you for the report. Just a quick question, and it's on the attachment. I just want to make sure you're going to, do you know what I'm going to ask you?
Nope. But
Okay,
I
good.
will explain the attachment.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is on the first page of the attachment under Title V, which is the second item. It looks like the brief description is specific to video service providers. Was that intentional?
Yes and no. And the first thing I'm going to do is, we have put together a summary here of all of the existing various items. And in some cases, this does reflect, you do see a Title V, so this is a violation specifically related to that, and it has to do with some of the changes in the franchise management. So those are the violations each day related to a violation by a franchise holder for that. So that specific.
So
to
was,
that.
okay, I'm sorry, let me, if I may interject, your intent in providing this as the brief description for Chapter 5.16 or 516 is that this is the one you're looking at changing or modifying?
And actually, that's why I want to explain the attachment. One of the
Sorry.
first things we are attempting to do with this particular document, if you may remember when we put together the master fee resolution, what we've attempted to do here at the staff level is identify all of our various penalties, fines, and provisions and put them into one spot. And it's been a rather cumbersome challenge on the part. What I would like to point out to you is, unless it's highlighted, it's not new. What we're simply doing is bringing all of these things into one summary document where staff, the council, and the public can find these things, because right now they're all embedded into the individual ordinances or a reference resolution. So in this particular case, under Title V, we're not recommending any changes. You're seeing it outlined so that it's in that summary outline.
Now I understand.
And I will give you an example that's a real-life experience that led to some of the inconsistencies. And former council member Dutton always used to ask me, well, what's the tooth? What's going to stop somebody? And Bob Tiernan and I experienced a situation where somebody cut down a tree without a permit. Bad enough, but it's even worse when it's the town tree on town property. And under our existing ordinance, we were able to charge them $100 for violation of the municipal code. Ergo, something's wrong with our process. So, but anyway, the ones that you see that are not highlighted represent no change, just a summary placement. And as the town attorney alluded to, we made a major change, actually, and it kind of relates also to the social host ordinance presentation. Both of these were brand-new ordinances, and they incorporated the use of the misdemeanor and administrative citation pairing so that they were a dual-choice option. And that's where you see the penalties recommended in the $550, $750, up to $1,000, and that's because we're not able to exceed what a misdemeanor citation is. So in Chapter 805, you see it highlighted, and we're allowing ourselves a portfolio of options to allow, as the town attorney identified. And then under social host, it matches what you've already adopted, therefore no change. But we're using that same principle. And then in the vehicles and traffic, it was kind of a chagrin to me when we were looking at this to find out how far out of date we were with where the county was going. So those are all, they're all existing fines, but they're all about 2 county adjustments behind.
So I'm sorry, may I continue?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'm understanding that that what you're recommending with regards to this attachment are the highlighted areas, or at least that's what's changed in what you're proposing, and that those fines are based on what the relative area of the county is already charging for those types of fees, fines, or
Specifically to
otherwise?
the parking and traffic cones, yes. We're going to match, our staff's recommendation is that we match the fine schedule that the county uses. One, they stay consistent. A lot of you may not be aware, because the fine revenue really doesn't come back to the town, and in fact, most of the fine revenue goes to miscellaneous places like the courts, the DMV, and only a small portion actually even comes back to the county. But under our contract with the county, we are given a $5,000 base credit for fines, and anything above and beyond that, they keep. But, you know, and so that's, the idea there is also simplicity, so that the deputy isn't writing a citation that then ends for being voided because it doesn't match the county schedule or vice versa. So that's just, we're setting ourselves up for enforcement problems with having a fine schedule that does not match what the county organization uses.
Okay.
And if I may, I might note that as the town clerk and the town manager in my office have been working through this process, there may be other penalties that we discover that we would bring back to the town council for review and possible increase. So while this is a very comprehensive list as we sit here tonight, there may be additional areas that we will be bringing back to you.
And probably the most fundamental thing that we're asking the council's consideration tonight is to make the administrative changes in the ordinance that the town attorney referred to get us out of that tree scenario situation, which gives us the tools. And then, as you may recall, when we adopted our nuisance abatement ordinance, it actually says that the administrative citation fines need to be established by council resolution. We haven't done that yet.
Right.
So that's
So
what
we have an open
this
item
is-
to resolve.
And that's our future language whenever we do that. And you'll note that obviously our future administrative citations will stay consistent. We're recommending that they would be $550, $750 for the second offense and $1,000 for the third, so that we'll start having some consistency with that approach. And that's the lion's share of what the town attorney is going to work magic on the ordinance, trying to connect all those moving dots and clean it up. And then, as he pointed out, we'll have a better place by using these summaries. We'll be able to do a better job of tracking where our fines and penalties and making it easier for staff to manage these situations and advise council when we have items that come up.
And if I make one additional comment also, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, by making this recommendation, it's not the view of our officer or your staff to be out arresting and hauling people off to court and into jail. What it does, however, is give as I indicated, the teeth necessary to have individuals pay attention if necessary. Our office does code enforcement for a number of our other clients, and it does give us great leverage in attempting to resolve code enforcement matters, especially in the area of residential noncompliance to existing zoning codes and other ordinances. So that's a big step in what's being proposed tonight.
I guess I'll just have one last question, and then I'll leave it to other council to have theirs. Is it contemplated here the ability of someone to cure a violation? I mean, I know this is very cursory and brief, but obviously we wouldn't want to cite someone with a misdemeanor. Is it the intent of this to give someone the ability to cure whatever council or code violation they have, rather than immediately issue the misdemeanor, haul them off to court?
I'm going to answer that initially with one word, is absolutely.
I assume so, but I need to ask.
Well, I want to go backwards, yes, because we're dealing with the very end product, and if you go back and look at the replacement nuisance abatement process actually has a very strict procedure that we have to go down before we even issue the first citation. Okay. And our objective on code enforcement, we always start code enforcement with what we call an outreach and an effort to educate and make the person aware. And then if they respond, it's resolved at that level. Now, when you look at a violation of the municipal code, not everything is as simple as code enforcement because, like I say, it's kind of hard to rectify cutting down the tree. There are some consequences, but as far as a code enforcement, we actually have a very outlined process that staff has to follow that's in our code section that the council adopted, and we do have a due process structure and then ultimately they can appeal staff's decision to you.
Councilmember Moeller, any questions of staff?
Yes, could you give us a description of a misdemeanor versus an infraction?
Sure. Yes. A misdemeanor is, well, first of all, a misdemeanor carries no criminal penalty, if you will. It's like getting a ticket. It does not carry any potential jail time. It can only be a violation of which is an infraction, can only be a fine. And so, I mean, if you're looking for a specific situation where our codes define something as a infraction versus misdemeanor, I apologize, I don't have the code in front of me, but there are certain conduct that is only defined currently as infractions that, quite frankly, is my experience in dealing with other municipal codes, those would normally be misdemeanors. A misdemeanor is a criminal filing. It has the potential, as I indicated, of a 6-month jail penalty or up to $1,000 fine or both. Now, especially in the area of code enforcement and other local crimes, if you will, that doesn't generally carry that kind of penalty. In my experience, you'd have to be a pretty flagrant violator of code enforcement violations to give rise to criminal misconduct. But there are certain circumstances where that may occur. The courts are not too eager to delve into that arena, but it sure does give us the necessary tool in the toolbox, if you will.
Okay, so then my follow-on question, it specifically relates to the table under Chapter 8.05, Enforcement, Nuisance Abatement, and Cost Recovery. Just trying to understand if I'm reading this correctly. What you're suggesting is that it's a misdemeanor unless it specifically states that it can be an infraction.
That is correct.
So that happens first. Okay, so now I think you just need to help me understand this highlighted yellow area, which we're recommending is going to be the new change. If there is, needs to be an enforcement of a nuisance abatement, first it's the misdemeanor, that can include jail time, and then you can do three violations of a civil fine and then 3 infractions?
No,
I'm confused.
Right. The civil fine would be the first tool that would be used, and we would typically start with the $500 fine. And that's why you need to think the civil fines and the misdemeanor run parallel with the actual, in other words, we would go and prosecute only if we were not successful in the other areas. And that's why it reads, that a misdemeanor can be up to jail time and a fine or both.
Okay. So in this specific case, the infraction would come before the misdemeanor because it's listed? No.
In this particular case, we would not recommend using an infraction. In most cases, an example of an infraction that we might use it would be a very minor thing, like somebody put an A-frame sign out. That could be an infraction. So there's a small degree, but basically we're trying to get away from the infractions.
If I can try to help here, it seems that Councilmember Moeller is trying to identify the escalation order, and frankly, it's confusing the way it's listed. It appears that the misdemeanor is the first step. And so there needs to be, if this is the way it's going to be visually presented, there needs to be, I think, a little better understanding of, is that fair to your question?
Yeah.
And I could say, this is a summary of the end consequences, and you really have to read the whole 12 to 14 pages. But we can certainly move the misdemeanor to the bottom of that chart.
Okay.
Whatever the first step is, should be the first thing listed, and the last step be the last thing. I think, is that to your point?
That would be much more intuitive than the other way around, even though everything will be a misdemeanor unless an infraction is available.
As this is presented back to you, we will make that change.
Okay. Then I think it would be more understandable to me, and well, then I have a comment, but I guess I'm not ready.
Yeah, just questions for now, I think. Councilmember Dornbecker, any questions of staff? Vice Mayor?
I'm going to be slightly repetitive. on Title 10, the stopping, standing, and parking section, the items in yellow, those are the new fines, those are not the old ones?
That's
Okay.
correct.
My concern had to be that, I didn't know what Napa counties were. There are some jurisdictions who I think are raising revenue rather than being punitive.
We're not in that category.
And this does not appear to be in that category at all. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dornbecker, you do have a question?
Well, that does bring up a question for me then, and that is that if these are not revenue-generating fines, and, I mean, is there some reason why we absolutely have to be consistent with the Napa County in terms of fines for parking and?
You contract with them, and they move deputies. We contract with them, and when you bring deputies in and out, and if they write a citation, and they write it on a county ticket book, and it's inconsistent with the Yountville Municipal, you run the risk that it could void the whole citation. But I also want to look at to the point that the mayor and vice mayor, this is also our enforcement when it opted to be used. We do not have a heavy-handed vehicle enforcement, but we're looking at, a parking violation, $37 to $50 to, with most being in the $30 range, and including no parking violations. Our favorite one, people that leave their cars too long, is $62 over 3 days. So not a significant, but basically, since we don't have our own law enforcement, when we have backup officers, our people that are coming in and backfilling for our designated deputies, they don't necessarily carry a Yountville Municipal Code book and ticket book. They're carrying a County of Napa. And that's what we're looking at because of the way our operation is structured.
And did they request these changes?
Staff has met with them, and they were apologetic for the fact that they hadn't recommended that we adjust these. We also have a run the risk because we are not currently, our fine structure does not comply with the requirements of the state. So we're supposed to have a $5 component that goes into paying for part of the court system that our fee structure currently does not reflect.
Why not, then? I mean, if that's...
We haven't done this. That's why somehow or another at the county level, this particular aspect of the contract hasn't been managed. I met with Captain Stewart and I said, look, this seems to be inconsistent. And she went through it with me and we sat down and said, need to clean it up. Somehow it just hadn't been addressed.
Well, if you were addressing it to this point, what prevents you from taking that, what the state requires, that extra $5 into consideration then?
We've done that to bring it. This
This
increase.
does include it.
Correct.
I see.
What I'm saying is the proposal brings us in line with everything that we're supposed to be and matches what the County of Napa's fine schedule is.
Thank
So
you.
it's a compliant fine schedule.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite any members of the public that would like to make a comment or have questions about this. Please step forward now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Felix Flynn. Point of clarification, the way I read this, staff is recommending that all Yountville Municipal Code violations be deemed misdemeanors unless specifically made an infraction by ordinance. So a parking violation could be a misdemeanor? This is confusing to me. There's a list of pages 1 through 6 list specific violations and specific fines associated with them. Misdemeanor or 6 months in jail or both. What could put somebody in jail for 6 months? I'm curious. What would be an example of that? Or
After you ask all your questions, and we have any
Yeah.
other public comment, I'll ask our attorney
Okay.
and staff to address your
That's what's on my
concerns.
mind. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that would like to ask questions or make comments at this time? Seeing no others, I will go right to staff, and if our town attorney can address the public's concern.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the town council, and let me first start with the vehicle and traffic violations, those are controlled and regulated by state law. So we are preempted as a general law city from any other penalty or designation other than what is permitted under the vehicle code. So to answer the question specifically, no, traffic violations and parking violations cannot be deemed as misdemeanors. They would be infractions. I should note that however, some traffic violations could be misdemeanors depending on the severity of the action. But what we see here are your standard parking violations and some standing and stopping violations, but those are all deemed infractions under the vehicle code. Going back to the second question on what may give rise to 6 months in jail, as I indicated earlier, that's very unlikely. In my 30-plus years of practicing law and doing code enforcement matters, I can candidly say to the town council that there's not been one situation where a court has imposed any jail time, other than maybe weekend or community service or things like that. So then begs the question: then why do we even go down that path? It's because of the ability to get the attention of the property owner or the property user to comply with our codes and other areas of our laws. The most egregious one that I know of is a property owner who demolished half of the house in a residential area, left the other half that gave rise to people coming in and living in the other half of the house that didn't own or belong there. It has been a rather long process to even have the courts impose significant penalties. In that situation, the court did impose jail time, but suspended the jail time, which means that they were not willing to. They kept allowing the property owner an opportunity to correct the situation. Our office is still handling that code enforcement matter, but it's a pretty severe conduct that does have impacts on the neighbors. A lot of what the laws, especially in the area of code enforcement, are to bring everybody into the same rules and follow the same procedures and the same, so that there isn't a detrimental effect on the quiet enjoyment of everyone's right to their own property. So that's some of the basic fundamental belief. But to specifically answer the question, it would be very, very rare that a court's going to impose 1 day of jail, let alone 6 months.
So the general philosophy at play here is to fairly significantly, in some cases, increase the maximum penalty allowed. It does not change the philosophy of how we go about processing violations. This is just, instead of it being a minor slap on the wrist being the maximum penalty, you're proposing that the maximum penalty be a real attention-getting punitive action that we hope to never have to enforce.
Yes. And just because you have a hammer in your toolbox doesn't mean that's the first thing you bring out. If you can fix the problem with a thumbtack, you try and do it.
Now, maybe this may be part of the reason for the public's question. Can you explain the reason that you want to go from flipping that coin in the very first step of starting out misdemeanor and working your way backwards versus starting out as an infraction and working up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council. The reason for that is because the language in our municipal code starts as an infraction, so that many of the violations that are in our code, and we will bring those specifics back to you also. Many of the violations are designated as infractions, which, as I reviewed the code, seem to be pretty inconsequential in terms of the action versus the potential penalty. And so by flipping that coin over, there is the presumption that a violation of the municipal code is a potential misdemeanor, unless it's designated as an infraction. We don't want to have jaywalking, for example, to be a misdemeanor, but, you would designate something like that as an infraction. That's probably a poor example, but, that's the best one that comes to my top of my head.
I think where we're having a little bit of trouble is not having those concrete examples of what qualifies for one thing or another. If somebody had a home like you described that was in complete disrepair, if a yard was full of junk, if there was something like that happening, if there was a violation, ongoing violation that was negatively impacting a neighborhood, we would need to understand where do all those things fall.
Let me try and help a little bit. One of the things under state law, infractions are set to a maximum of 100 for the first offense, 200 for the third offense, and 300 for the third offense, and that's the maximum by state law. So I'm going back to, under that circumstance, somebody that has a conditional use permit and they violate the terms of the conditional use permit and the council wants to do something prior to revoking it, that's your maximum. And that is why we're looking at trying to use a civil fine structure. What you really need to think about, and I go back to the example of the person that cut the tree down, he was more than happy to pay his infraction of $100. And I think what we're trying to say is those are the way the current structure is. What you're really looking at is creating a civil fine, which is a tool that parallels the misdemeanor, which is why the maximum fine is subject to $1,000. Same structure that we put in place with the social host ordinance, same structure that you put in place when you adopted the code enforcement nuisance abatement. And what we're doing principally that we don't have is we've never on our own established what the town's civil fine would be. So that's what the biggest conversation is really all about, is putting in a civil fine amount. And then Arnold's team is going through and trying to identify in our ordinance where we need to clarify which is an infraction, which is a civil fine / misdemeanor. So that's the best clarification to try to put it into parallel with what we're doing. Does not change our philosophy, and I think that's a very important thing. We talked about the fact that our nuisance abatement procedure is very detailed. Our attempt is to gain compliance at the lowest level first. But I do remember, the council's often asked, well, what's the tooth if somebody goes ahead and does this? And right now, I got to tell you, Bob and I don't find a $100 infraction a very effective tooth in dealing with a number of violators.
So before we go further into council discussion, I wanted to give the public, I wasn't sure if you were looking to have another comment or if you were satisfied, because once you make another comment, then we were going to close the public part of it and then go just to council discussion. I wasn't clear on whether you wanted to ask another question or make another comment.
Thank you for clarifying. You actually articulated going down that path quite a bit. That was on my mind, and I'm sure everybody else in Yountville. To me, it's still vague. It's still, there could be countless examples of this. To what degree is this enforceable? Are there concrete examples of current situations in Yountville that bring this to light? And why all of a sudden? Why? How long has this been in the works? And what's going on with it? To me, it was a surprise to me that this was on the agenda tonight. And I came here to get more information. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. And so we'll kind of wrap up the public comment portion of this. I'll ask if staff can elaborate on those questions, and then I'll invite council to ask additional questions and have comments. So is that something that can be addressed, about the concern about why is this coming up now? Are there any other examples of how this can be defined?
Well, I think one of the things that you have to look at is we're giving you a summary and recommending a tool structure and not a specific. I will give you several examples. We've had potentials where we've had to talk to people about illegal signs. They'll write the check for the infraction. We had the tree situation. Anything that's in the municipal code that has some potential to be a violation. If we have a business that's operating inconsistent with their conditional use permit, that is potentially a violation. Could be a zoning code violation. It could be somebody that gets cited for keeping inappropriate animal. That's a violation of the municipal code. You're not allowed to have farm animals, things like that. So, I mean, it's hard to answer to the gentleman's specific question because our process identifies that we advise the person of what they're in violation or potential of violation of. We have seen a growing number of code enforcement situations. You may recall we started the abatement procedure process on a property that was trashed. And again, we actually got to the point where we put them on notice that, you're about to trigger the $500 a day, because that was the process that we had in there. So I don't want the public to think that there's a lot of whole eminent. This is a major housekeeping measure, just bringing ourselves up. The timing has more to do with staff's ability of when we pull things together and have the ability to work on them. This has required a lot of research on the part of the town clerk and myself, and then sitting down and working with the town attorney and his team. I don't think it's a rampant issue in Yountville, but I do know that the council has asked us to take a good look and has consistently requested that, in your opinion, you felt that we don't have a very strong enforcement mechanism, and I have to agree. And the town attorney also now, after reviewing, agrees. This doesn't change our overall approach or philosophy one bit to how we want to do it, but we do need to make sure that the consequences potentially do match what the potential violation might be.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor has, I think, a question or comment, and then Councilmember Dornbecker will be next.
My only comment at this point on this one topic, and maybe this is specifically to Arnold, I know we're not looking at the municipal code, we're not looking at specific items here, this is the framework, is when I read through this, if I go to, say, Section 10, Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, it specifically says in the description, any violation of the provisions of this chapter is subject to a civil penalty. And if I go to 17, zoning, it says violation down the bottom is a misdemeanor and a separate offense each and every day. What I think would be useful, and maybe when we get to this point, is if I look at the chart that you have essentially of parking, it says here's the code, here's what it is, it's $62.50 each violation, and then it says civil penalty. So there's a consistent either method through there, or each description makes a specific notation in the top that says these are civil penalties, infractions, just for that consistency perspective, and I think that will just make it easier for people to understand. That's my suggestion or question of whether that makes sense.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Well, what staff is recommending doesn't say that. It says that all Yountville Municipal Code violations would be deemed misdemeanors unless specifically made an infraction by ordinance. And I feel that we should have every tool in the toolbox, but I think that this is punitive and unjustifiably punitive. And I just don't think that that's the way to flip it. I think the way to do it is to spell out what are going to be civil fines and things like that, and that there is the possibility that the ultimate conclusion would be a misdemeanor in certain situations. But I don't think that making everything a misdemeanor is the way to approach this at all. Sorry.
Councilmember Moeller, do you have questions or comments at this point? Either comments are welcome.
Well, first I thought I really kind of understood it, and now I'm a little confused. I think at this point, I'd like to see this. You suggested earlier that there were 12 or 14 pages. If we read those, it would lead into this. I actually went to the municipal code and tried to, get a sense of it, where this really fit in, and I really still don't have that. In general, I am fine with providing the town and staff, teeth to actually be able to enforce what we need to enforce. And I'm pretty sure this is going in that direction, but I'm just not perfectly clear on that. And the only other comment I wanted to make, it's unfortunate that we can't increase some of the state fines. Seems like Yountville, we always have unique situations. I see these big, giant tour buses hanging out in red zones for hours, and they can only get a $62 ticket. So, just unfortunate that I can't increase that. But, so I think those are my comments.
Okay, Councilmember Hall, your comments.
Yes. In general, I believe, we need to have further tools in the toolbox. We've discussed this in prior meetings. There has to be some ability to enforce or have teeth for enforcement, and I think stepping up the level of what we're going to present. And I heard Councilmember Dornbecker intimate that, it wasn't clear that we started a misdemeanor. I think it's pretty specific that it says unless defined as an infraction, and that's fairly clear in your language, so I feel relatively comfortable with that. What I would say, though, in general, is that these municipal codes and the enforcement thereof really requires the vigilance of the individuals in the community, because it's not like you guys are walking into people's backyards or into people's houses to see what's going on and or in the neighborhoods to necessarily identify what's going on. So it does concern me somewhat that a neighbor is going to be enforcing a misdemeanor potentially on another neighbor, and how that might play out when something bad happens to someone next door. I'm not entirely sure if that is ultimately going to be the case, but it certainly wouldn't make good neighbors if I was sending my other neighbor misdemeanors every couple of months because of the infractions they were incurring. But as was indicated, because of the ability to cure any violation of the code, if that is truly the measure and the steps that the town is trying to articulate, we have the right to go out and try to cure whatever violation we may have created. And that's not to be said that I've ever violated the code, but I'm sure that somewhere, somehow, I might have done it. The reality is, as long as I have the opportunity to cure that, I would feel more comfortable, and that seems to be what they're communicating. So those are my only comments at this juncture.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, final.
I'm going to echo in general Councilmember Hall's, and I think it goes back to the comments that the town manager made and the town attorney, is we have in place processes. This is like the master fee schedule. We have in place processes on how we go about it. And if we had one person who violated our 30-day rental ordinance, and that situation was send them a letter, talk to them, et cetera, and when they sort of, give you the old middle finger and say it's my constitutional right to do whatever the heck I want to do, then that's when you get into that. And those procedures are still in place, and it just says that eventually if you built something giant in your backyard and you're just like, forget it, I don't care, make my day, at some point you've got to take action. And I think that is all that this is doing. So it makes sense to me. This is not an action that we're taking tonight, and we're going to see the specific rules written later. And I think that will allay some of our concerns. So I support what staff has done so far, and I don't have any issues with it.
Well, what I will say is the recommendation is to approve the recommendations of staff and provide direction to have changes made to the code to be brought back at a future council meeting. What I am going to propose, and certainly the council may make a motion to take that recommendation. I am going to propose that we take alternative number 1 that's listed, which is basically, as opposed to voting on this tonight, returning this to staff and the town attorney with the comments of the public and the comments of the council tonight to make those changes prior to us taking that first vote. Like I said, council is open to making a motion. That's just my recommendation.
Actually, if I will with the council, this is not in a finished product. This is not a finished product. This is much like we brought you the drafts. What we're trying to do is take your feedback, and then we will bring back the appropriate ordinance. I want to walk through a couple things because I think I hear some things that staff can work on. I want to make sure everybody understands right now, one of the big tools missing in our tool bag is the civil penalty. That does not exist. So where you see it in those charts is where we're proposing to add it. So that's what I want you to realize. That $550, $750, and up to a $1,000 when it parallels a misdemeanor does not exist. And what we're suggesting is that that can be a very appropriate tool in a number of those areas where we already have the potential for a misdemeanor. And then there are certain places where an infraction is appropriate. And I do want to point out that, yes, it's tedious, but since this is a summary chart, this ordinance that we're talking about, and Arnold and I will work on it with Michelle and we'll clean it up, this isn't going to have all of your detailed procedures because they actually go back. If you may remember, your nuisance abatement ordinance is about this thick. Some of the other ones have their procedures. This is a summary outline, and the principal thing we're doing here is establishing the penalty amounts.
So
Processes have
we're
already
just
been
giving you direction to take it back.
I think we have
the
enough.
recommendation language to me read you wanted action tonight. So to make it clear to everybody listening and concerned, you've received the public comments and the staff comments, and we'll go have another draft that will be presented at a future date.
And you will also see the ordinance will be written in that format. And it will incorporate a number of the things that the town attorney was identifying, those 5 elements.
That's great. So there will be time if other members of the public feel like they need to participate in the discussion, they'll be welcome to do so. This has been a good introduction to the changes, and as I said, you've heard some comments from the council for your consideration. Are there any other, do you need anything else from the council tonight? Steve or Arnold, do you need anything else from us tonight?
No, we're fine, thank you.
On that item? Very well. Thank you very much, and thanks for the feedback from both the public and the council on that. Let's move on to 11B. Zoning and Design Review Board, consideration of 3 Town Council ZDRB ad hoc advisory committees and appointing 2 council members and 2 ZDRB members to each of the 3 ad hoc advisory committees. And I believe we'll hear in the staff report that the ZDRB has taken up this item.
Yes.
Please.
Good evening. So as you recall, this is loud.
That's the first time that one's been used, I think.
As you recall, in September, we held a joint work session at the Town Council and the ZDRB where there was discussion on potentially amending zoning and design ordinance sections, creating a historic resources policies, and revising ZDRB authority and bylaws, and potentially modifying the discretionary review process. Staff suggested the creation of 3 advisory committees consisting of 2 members of the Town Council and 2 members of the ZDRB, and each of those committees would delve deeper into the issues and come back with recommendations to the Town Council. So staff is recommending that the Council nominate its members to each of the 2 members each to the 3 committees as the ZDRB has done, and I'll mention those in my presentation. The first committee is the Zoning Ordinance and Design Ordinance Amendment Committee, and its goal is to review the existing code sections, to evaluate how well these are regulating the built environment and whether it's achieving the desired result, and then to suggest modifications where the end result is not being achieved. A good starting point is with the detailed comments we've already received from the ZDRB, and that was included in the September staff report. But staff also has suggestions on different definitions that could be better defined, on sections that are unclear, and on areas where the code is silent. So we'll include those suggestions as well. This committee will probably be the first to get started based on the background effort that's already gone into the topic. So I believe it'll be the first to convene. The ZDRB has nominated Chair Janes and Vice Chair Anglin to this committee. The second committee is the Historic Resources Committee, and it will start with 3 potential work actions: updating the historic resources inventory, creating historic resource policies, and developing a historic resources element of the general plan. Although this committee won't be bound to these topics or limited to them either, the goal really is to address the historic resources in town and to update the policies to reflect the importance of those. The existing inventory that was created in '78 probably doesn't list all properties that could potentially be included. It doesn't state the duties or rights of property owners of historic properties, and nor does the town have design standards that are specific to historic historic resources. And this is not to say that the town doesn't evaluate impacts to historic resources when they're developed, because CEQA requires that any potential adverse impact to a historic resource be mitigated to a level of insignificance. And this is generally done by complying with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So that's how we currently do things. The work of this committee will probably be longer term than the Ordinance Amendment Committee, and that's really based on the breadth of the different potential work items for this committee. The ZDRB nominated Member Durham and Member Gates to this committee. And the third and last committee is the ZDRB Bylaws, Authorities, and Procedures Committee. And the goal would be to look at the discretionary review process, the ZDRB authority and bylaws, and recommend changes to any one or all of these. And staff would recommend that the first work action would be to formalize the ZDRB authority and the bylaws, since the bylaws are silent as to their duties, although these are referenced in the zoning ordinance. And so this would probably be one of the actions that would occur fairly soon. Future work items would include consideration of broadening the ZDRB authority, and the staff report has an example of the different commercial type of projects where it may be appropriate. This committee would also consider whether to amend the discretionary review process, and the staff report identifies the rather lengthy and time-consuming master development plan process. And these are just two examples that could serve as a starting point for this committee. The ZDRB selected members Durham and members Wennerberg to this committee. So, as I noted, we'll be asking the council to make its selections tonight. And when you're doing so, you can refer to the three different committees by A, B, or C as they're listed in the in the agenda, if that's easier. And then after tonight, staff will communicate with the members to see their availability and to schedule the meetings and start the work on these actions.
So we are still actually accepting the recommended appointments from the ZDRB as well as establishing our own membership on these committees?
Correct.
So we can mix them all up and change them if we want? I'm just kidding.
Well, I wouldn't recommend that.
All right. Any questions of staff before we proceed on this item? Pretty
Only
straightforward.
one.
Councilmember Hall?
Only one question. So was there an expectation with regards to timing of meetings and those kinds of things? I mean, I know we all have lives as well. I just want to make sure that, are these hour-long meetings once a month, once every other week? Do we have that established yet?
We haven't established that yet. I would reach out to all of you to see what your availability is, what times work best. And I think we'd sort of ease into it slowly. Like I say, I think we'll start with the Zoning and Design Ordinance Amendment Committee. Once we get that established, we can start working on the ZDRB Bylaws Committee, and then the third would be to jump into the Historic Resources. But to be respectful of everyone's time and to not jam a busy schedule down everyone's throat, because we want to really consider all these changes and instead of rushing forward.
And my only other question is, I don't see, or at least it doesn't say in the report, that there will be active participation by someone in planning, yourself or Bob. Is that assumed?
Yes.
So these are just going to be four-person committees without any... Yeah.
Right. We would help guide the discussion and put our analysis before you and give you suggested things to talk about.
Okay.
They get to be at all three.
Yeah, I was going to say. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Other questions of staff? Now, the one question I wanted to ask, you're asking us to first establish these committees officially? I thought we did that previously. We have not formally established the committees? Yes, no? So, okay. So we need to do
You
that before.
established the framework and the direction for us to move to do so, and this is the formalization of that action.
Okay. So prior to that, I'm going to invite any member of the public, if you would like to comment on what we're talking about right now. Now would be the time to do that. Seeing no action. Yes, so what I think the first course of business here is to formally establish these committees if the council so desires, which we would need in the form of a motion, I presume.
I would like to move that we establish the Zoning and Design Ordinance Amendment, Historic Resources, and ZDRB Bylaws, Authority and Procedures Ad Hoc Committees.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are unanimously established. So let's go to A, the Zoning and Design Ordinance Amendment Ad Hoc Committee. And do you recommend, whatever the procedure was that the ZDRB followed, was that by volunteer, or how did that work, and was it effective? It obviously got an end result. Was it good?
Individual members indicated which boards or which committees they had the greatest interest in, and it just happened to settle out with a person for each committee, and with one member willing to serve on two.
So the pressure's on us now to function so smoothly.
Yeah.
So would you recommend that I just ask for volunteers for the first committee, and if we have more than two, then we have a conversation?
Mhm.
And if we don't have two, we have another conversation. So do we have two members that are interested in the first committee? Oh, that's a really good start, folks. I will offer, I'll offer people up if people don't volunteer.
Can we go through the rest of them first, maybe?
If you're that afraid of the first one, yes, we can move on to the second. Are there volunteers for the second committee, which is the Historic Resources Committee?
I'd like to volunteer.
I'd like to volunteer.
So we have 3 members of volunteering for that. Was there a process that you followed in terms of picking 2 out of 3? Was there a motion and a vote, or is it not that formal?
Well, we didn't run into that.
Oh, great. All right, here we go.
Well, I'll tell you, I will rescind
To help the council, I think a couple thoughts on that. One is you can have a conversation.
We're fixing it right now.
I'm a big boy. I'm willing to rescind my interest in that, although I emailed it in advance of the meeting. I'm willing to rescind it.
So let's just hold on before we commit to anything.
I emailed it as requested to the town clerk.
Okay,
and the
let's
town
not have too casual a conversation about this, but where do we stand on the third committee? Do we have volunteers for the third committee?
I'll volunteer for
Vice
that one,
Mayor,
too.
okay. So I want to find out, because that may matter in how many people are participating in what. So we have 2 volunteers for the third committee. So Councilmember Moeller and Vice Mayor Chilton, that may be acceptable to the council. We'll find out in a second. If you are removing your preference from
I did.
B,
I removed my preference from B.
Then
and I'll toss
Councilmember-
my hat in the ring for A.
the proposal will be Councilmember Moeller and Councilmember Dornbecker for B, and A is wide open. I would not suggest Councilmember Moeller, since she's already on 2 of them.
I would nominate the mayor for that one.
There aren't any nominations happening at this time.
I'll second that.
I'm
going to get back to appointing if I have to.
Mayor Dunbar, I'm happy to join that group.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Moeller,
Oh, so you've thrown your hat in the ring for
he's
that.
offered to
I'm
participate
happy
in the
to-
first.
I'm a team player.
Councilmember Moeller, did you have a comment?
I just, I think that, it's just an opinion that Mayor Dunbar and Councilmember Dornbecker have both been on the ZDRB, so you would have your learning curve would be much less steep than the rest of us who haven't been on that one. So that's just an opinion I will offer up.
Interesting strategy. I don't agree with it. I don't believe it. But I'm happy to volunteer to be on that first committee with Councilmember Hall. That allows all of us to participate. And so what we are proposing, as I understand it, A would be myself and Councilmember Hall.
Yes.
B would be Councilmember Moeller and Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes.
And C would be Councilmember Moeller and Vice Mayor Chilton.
Yes.
Can we do that all in the form of a single action?
Yes, please.
Does anyone have a motion to that effect?
I'll move what you just said.
I'll second what he just said.
I think Councilmember Hall had the second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And no opposition. Thank you very much. That was almost as clean as the ZDRB.
Good job.
Thank you. And we're looking forward to working with the whole ZDRB on moving this forward. So thank you very much. Now we will move on to item 11C, the potential appointment of a Napa County Transportation and Planning Agency Bicycle Advisory Committee Yountville representative. Do we have a staff report and results from our previous interview and vote?
Yes, we do. We are recruiting for the NCTPA Bicycle Advisory Committee, as the mayor indicated. We did recruit for this position, and at the close of the filing period, received one application from Kelly Felker, and she was interviewed by council earlier this evening. After reviewing the vote tallies from council, they have unanimously recommended her appointment to serve on the NCTPA Bicycle Advisory Committee, so I ask that the town council take a motion to appoint her, and then we will recommend that to NCTPA for their agenda.
Is there a motion to that effect? Before, actually, good point. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before we proceed with that, I would invite Paul to comment on this potential appointment, if you'd like. No? Thank you for that reminder. That's right. That is your job, among other things.
Right.
With no public comment, I'll return to potential action on the council's part.
Motion to approve Kelly Felker as the Town of Yountville representative for the NCTPA Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And Ms. Falco, thank you very much if you're watching. Congratulations, and we look forward to your representation on the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Thank you very much. And I think I'll invite the town clerk for item 12, staff informational reports. Do we have some reports for you to
Yes,
share?
thank you, Mayor. I have two announcements to make. We are recruiting for two volunteer commissions. The first one is the Yountville representative on the Napa County Arts and Culture Commission, and the deadline to submit application is October 24th. And then we are also recruiting for our local Parks and Community Services Commission. We have one member position and one high school non-voting position. The deadline has been extended for that commission to Monday, November 7th. If you need details, you can get the application and notice a vacancy on our website, or you can contact me at Town Hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are a couple good opportunities for people to volunteer and participate in their community. So we encourage folks to step forward.
Mr. Mayor, I also have two for
Yes.
staff. The first one is a streetlight project is under construction. Right now, it's on Washington Street. The no parking signs are up. We just ask people to be careful around the construction. We've asked contractor to work on the west side of Washington first. The pedestrian traffic would be on the east side, then they'd switch over to the other side. It's shown for quite a long schedule. We don't anticipate them to need all that time, so when they're working, those signs will be out. They'll take them down as soon as the work is done. The second item is the next three council meetings. We have quite a few items about public works, hydrology, hydraulics, pavement management, sewers. So this is essentially to get you and the public up to speed on our assessment of our existing infrastructure. So just wanted to put that out there for future. There will be items, but just a general overall, we'll be focusing on our infrastructure.
And we have some slurry sealing and street blockages and closures coming up as well, correct?
It'll start on October 19th, so I was going to mention that at the next council meeting.
Okay, just to give people a heads up, and there has been some notification to neighborhoods of that action. Will there be additional notification?
Right, so there was an article update in the newspaper, but notices will go out to the property owners a few days before, and the barricades will be up, and the changeable message signs, that kind of thing.
So there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to understand when they need to move their vehicles prior to that.
Correct, and turn off their sprinklers, we hope.
Very well. Any other staff informational reports? Seeing no others, so we'll move on to council reports and comments. We'll start with reports. As they are listed, NCTPA. Yeah, no.
We can go.
Let's
go?
Yes, actually, Councilmember Mueller filled in for us. So you have a report on that?
I do. There were several things that I wanted to mention. They were primarily in the form of grants that were received by NCTPA that I think will be interesting to everybody. They received a $2.5 million grant for the bike trail. So it looks like that will be moving forward, especially in Napa.
The Vine Trail, right?
Right.
Yeah, not purely bike trail, so just to confuse, yeah.
Right. Jameson Canyon project has received full funding. I think if people have been traveling along that road, they've seen that the work has already started. Also, there's been a grant received and work's going to start. Collaboration between NCTPA with American Canyon and Caltrans for transportation plan along Highway 29 from American Canyon down to the county line in Solano. There's actually a little piece in Solano that's along Highway 29 that was brought up to, might as well include that little piece as well. Yountville received there was a discontinuation of the farm workers van pool due to lack of interest, and so Yountville has received a free van from that program. And I think that's gone to the Parks and Recs Department for their use.
It's actually gone as far as the back parking lot right now while we renovate it.
And if I remember correctly, that each of the municipalities in the county was given a van? Is that how it ended
That's
up
correct.
happening?
And two, at least, don't want their vans. And so if Yountville wants another van, but speaking with the town manager, he believes, I think at this time, one is enough.
And there were a number of agencies, public and private nonprofits, that voiced their interest in those vehicles at an earlier NCTPA meeting. So there will be opportunities that the NCTPA, I think, will probably find a home for those.
Just to clarify, we did compete for a second van, but unsuccessfully. There was a lottery on a second draw, and we didn't win.
The Yountville Park and Ride lot was approved in completion, and just to let everyone know, there was a ribbon cutting last week for the beginning of the Saskell Gateway Transit Center construction, i.e. the new bus depot that's going to connect a lot of transit downtown Napa, and that's beginning now, and it's scheduled to be completed by July 2012. That's it.
Thank you for that report. Do we have a report on Upper Valley Waste Management Authority?
Yes, we have, the last meeting, we continued to discuss ways to improve the service delivery for Yountville in addition to the other municipalities. We also, our town manager, Steve Rogers, attended with me. We took a tour of the recycling facility. And that's a pretty interesting tour to take, so might be something that the rest of the council or other people would be interested in doing at a later date. It's amazing. You throw your stuff in that blue can, and now we know what all happens to it up at that facility. There's also going to be a composting workshop this Thursday, October the 6th at the Community Center from 6:30 to 8. People can go and you can purchase backyard composting bin for $20. This regularly costs more than $100. So encourage people to go to that. And the Upper Valley Waste Management Authority had a booth at Yountville Days. So they're actively participating. It's a way, part of their education to reach out to everyone in our community, anyone else who came.
Busy meeting schedule. We'll move on to Councilmember Hall. Do you have a report on Watershed Information Center and Conservancy of Napa County?
I do, and it was a spirited meeting this last week. It was almost full attendance, so that was kind of interesting. I think we missed one member on the committee. Really, the three areas that were discussed were the Groundwater Resource Advisory Commission, which is basically in place. I believe October 27th is the first meeting they're going to have. So there are representatives throughout the county for that commission, and it's really to basically do evaluation, review, and discussion around the groundwater resource here in Napa County, which is a huge issue. And as we all know, water is critically important, especially in this community and in all communities. The other discussion pieces that were there were a presentation on the trout and salmon run this last year. As you all might recall, there were late rains in March, which resulted in not being able to get not being able to get the test equipment out. I think they call it I want to say they call it a ladder, not a ladder, oh heavens, what do they call it? Anyways, it's a big silo thing these fish swim through, and they actually catch hundreds of them a day, and they have to go measure them and make sure that, the rotary screw cap. Thank you. I should have known screw cap. That was my old nickname. It's a joke. anyways, it was really interesting to hear the report. The gentleman, Jonathan Kohler, was here at the Yountville Days this last weekend, and I had the opportunity to reach out to him, and I think that it would be an interesting thing either for the Yountville camps or whomever is maybe the school or the Yountville Elementary, if they would be interested to go see how this process works, because they do allow, education. They do have an education program where they involve young kids, kids from the community. I don't know if Yountville's ever participated in that, but it's an interesting thing. And this is really bringing life back to the rivers in Napa County, which we all relied very, very heavily upon, of course. They talked a little bit about Coastal Cleanup Day, which was, I think it was last month. They talked that they had over 600 volunteers. So they obviously did work in the different creeks and areas here throughout Napa County, and it was quite successful. I left my notes at home. I want to say they got over 16 tons of things. The one comment that came out of that was it was very successful because there was so much trash to clean up. And so, we need to think about what that really means. Unfortunately, it means that we continue to have trash that we're leaving elsewhere, and it's making its way into our creeks and into the riverbeds. And then lastly, the thing they talked about was Lobesia. And if you're not familiar with that, this is the European grapevine moth. And its impact on the community or the Napa Valley in itself. And really, the big success story this year was that it was identified the year before. There were several tens of thousands of these critters captured. They're little moths, obviously, and they destroy grapes, unfortunately, which is critical to our community. But this last year, what they identified or what they were able to capture based on the plans and the known literally what they do is they plan spraying through vineyards. Every vineyard had to spray within a 2-week period, and then they had a pheromone disruptor that went out and taught these things to go mate with something else instead of each other. And they, I believe, captured and traps this year less than 100. So what it kind of speaks to is, the community in and of itself really being able to communicate effectively about how to control some sort of scourge or something that comes into the valley, and how as a community, we all actively participate, and that obviously there was a lot of support for that particular program. The grape harvest being very important, it was obvious why that occurred. But it was interesting to hear that, and again, how that ultimately could affect not just the agricultural, but by using some of these chemicals to disrupt that stuff, what it might ultimately do to the water that we see coming through our pipes. So that was the short version of it. It was a longer meeting, but it was actually really interesting and informational. So that's it.
Thank you for that report. Local Agency Formation Commission of Napa County. Vice Mayor.
LAFCO met yesterday. We've been on a every other month schedule, and there, despite that, still wasn't a whole lot of things on the agenda. I think the most interesting item is out of the recent legislative session, Governor Brown did sign a bill that allows for an expedited process for LAFCOs to consolidate special districts. There's a lot of special districts in the state that are seeing some really severe financial problems, and the current process was cumbersome and had some issues with it. So if you have districts that are in agreement that they want to merge or have a solution, it allows for an expedited process to make that happen. I can't see any situation at this point that would affect Yountville, but I think we do know there's some special districts in Berryessa that have some issues. So that could give some tools down the road if it was so needed to address those kind of issues. So that's the one interesting thing that came out of, I shouldn't say it quite that way. That's the one impactful thing in the long term that came out of the LAFCO meeting. And the next LAFCO meeting is on November the 7th, and is going to be held actually in this room, I believe. There's a biennial planning session that LAFCO goes through, and that is actually going to be held in Yountville on the 7th of November. So if you're so inclined to listen to that discussion, I'm sure it will be open to the public.
Thank you. And Councilmember Dornbecker, you have a report on the library?
Well, I have been meeting with Councilmember Moeller and also our representative on the Library Commission, Linda Cantillian. And we have been making progress. We've been, what we had been hoping for, which is the volunteer program, seems to be in the works. At least we understand that the head of the Napa City and County Libraries, Dennis Kreimeier, is going to be presenting the idea of using this volunteer program in the one station, which we are the station. And it would consist of bringing in volunteers for a couple of hours in the beginning. As it gets rolling, we expect more hours. But it has to be approved. This change to the library has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors, and we believe that Dennis Kreimeier is bringing this to the Board of Supervisors, Napa County Supervisors, on October the 18th. And so if people wanted to be present to support it, unfortunately I'm going to be out of the country, but it would be a great thing to show up and pledge your support. And Marjorie has said that she will notify the council members if that actually does get on the agenda. So we have been moving forward and making progress, and I think that the fact that Dennis Kreimeier has decided that this is an avenue that's possible is a very good possibility for us to provide for more library hours.
Thank you. Thanks for that work. Certainly taking the lead and being proactive, I think, sounds like it's finally paying off. So that's great. So thanks for doing that.
Marjorie led the way. I wanted to make one other announcement, please.
We'll do announcements and comments. I just have a couple meeting reports, and then we'll get right to that. I did want to mention that I have been representing the town at sub-RENA meetings. That's the kind of a subcommittee of regional housing need assessment representatives of each of our municipalities. We are evaluating the process as it moves forward, determining the housing allocations that will be given on the next housing cycle, and we're trying to be proactive as a county to work together on the appropriate impact of housing as it's being given to us or mandated by the state and by the Association of Bay Area Governments. The other meeting I just wanted to mention that has some impact on us is the Napa Valley Tourism Improvement District Board, the local board on which I'm joined by our town manager, and we have been in conversations about this upcoming year's budget, as well as some of the events that will specifically happen here in Yountville during what is being coined the Cabernet season. It's no longer the off-season or winter, it's now the Cabernet season. Things like the movable feast that has been successful in years past, as well as our Winterscape. We have some new improvements to Winterscape that we're looking forward to bringing to the community. They're also supporting the Napa Valley Film Festival that's coming up in November. Also, the Napa Valley Museum miniatures display that was a huge success last year is coming forward again, kind of bigger and better. And also, the Improvement District Board is supporting the Yountville Arts, and the Yountville Arts Committee has out there right now on the streets the 2012 Yountville Arts Calendar that I know everybody needs to have and wants to have, and don't be shy about how many you want to purchase. So it's a great way to support the Yountville Arts community. This money goes right back to ourselves and the community, and it's a great, it's a beautiful calendar. ZDRB board member Rob Wenneberg, one of the several talented photographers that's featured in that. So look for that around town. So with that, those are some of the meetings. Let's get to comments or announcements. Any comments or announcements by the council? I know if I turn to my right, there's something coming. Councilmember Mueller?
You might be covering this, but I thought that Yountville Days this year was particularly well attended, and everyone really loved the parade, and we had 43 floats, more than we've ever had before. So, and I think there was a lot of good mixture of new booths that came this year, Scientopia and the Upper Waste Management, that, really we're all very impressed with our facilities and our activities that day. So I think it was a very good success.
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Thank you. I also wanted to congratulate the Parks and Rec Department for a great Yountville Days Festival. I didn't attend the movie night, but I heard that it was a really wonderful thing, and the chili cook-off, you just did a wonderful job. I wanted to also make sure that the town residents realize how much we appreciate how many things they volunteer for and help us out with, and Yountville Days has always been a Yountville-centric event, and so thank you to everyone for doing that. And then on a sort of somber note, I wanted to also point out that October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so I'm going to ask you to please support the services throughout the Napa County that support the victims of domestic violence.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, any announcements? I just have a couple more things I wanted to mention. I'll start off with a letter that I wrote on behalf of the Town Council to the Postmaster General. This was it was kind of a partnership with Congressman Mike Thompson, who also penned a letter to the Postmaster General expressing our opposition to the proposed closure of the Veterans Home Post Office. And we have asked that, first of all, that they not close that post office, but also that they explain their process and evaluation and their procedures as to how they are going to determine whether that or any other post offices in our area are closed. And a follow-up to that, I just received, as many people in Yountville may have received, a postal customer survey. And it goes specifically to our services and our use of the post office, and this is going to be used in the evaluation of the Veterans Home Post Office. So be sure to respond to that survey if it has been mailed to you, because we definitely need to be as proactive as possible to keep the Veterans Home Post Office operating. I'd also like to mention that on October 17th, in our Heritage Room at the Community Center, the Postal Service is hosting a community meeting from 5:30 to 7 on this very issue. So please come express your views about their proposed plan. Also, I was joined by Councilmember Moeller, Councilmember Dornbecker, and our town manager at the League of California Cities North Bay Division Conference in San Francisco. Also present there was town attorney. I was going to acknowledge that, but our town attorney was also there. We were educated on a variety of topics. We kind of split up and tried to hit as many conference sessions as possible, anything from mayor and council protocols to additional alternatives and tools to be used for fiscal health and wellness in communities, and it was all part of the Cities Supporting Strong Cities conference. So that was a good conference, and I was elected the North Bay Division president at that conference. So I'm looking forward to representing Yountville and the entire North Bay Division, and hopefully we'll have an even greater impact through this advocacy group when we have to deal with issues in Sacramento. Let's see. I also just wanted to acknowledge Yountville Days and also the Chamber. The Chamber of Commerce really is the one that does the chili cook-off on Saturday. The Napa Valley Museum participated this year Saturday evening. So it's really becoming an even broader community celebration and effort. That was, I believe, our 34th, and we're looking forward to 35 next year. It really was a fantastic whole weekend of activities. The weather held out for us, which was great. But really, Samantha, you and all of the staff and the dozens and dozens of green-shirted volunteers of all ages, they really make it all happen. So it was really a wonderful, fun experience for all of us. So kudos to everybody. I did just want one last comment, and it was mentioned earlier by Mr. Warren about Senate Bill 10 that really has an impact on the Allied Council. It was brought to the governor last year, and it was vetoed after getting unanimous approval, I believe, by the legislature. They went back again and got it approved this year, it gives a voice to the Allied Council, where basically, to paraphrase it, the Allied Council can speak in a formal capacity in Sacramento to represent the membership at the Veterans Home, and so that's going to hopefully give them an even more robust voice when they have issues in Sacramento to deal with. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and thank you for also updating us on that vote. So those are my comments. If there are none other, and I don't see any others, I thank the council and staff for all the work this evening, and we will move on to, we see some future agenda items there. We'll be getting fire and sheriff public safety quarterly reports, an update on the pavement management program that we teased just a little bit this evening, and also additional information on the Tourism Improvement District work plan for 2011-2012. And seeing no other business, I will recommend a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. October 17th, 5:30 to